Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here and welcome back to another Destiny video. Now today I want to speak to you guys about the Rise of Iron story. If you're anything like me, then you probably completed the campaign and were like, what the hell did I just do? Why was I there? Why did this happen? And what on earth is going on? As is often the case when you finish a Destiny story, because unless you dive onto Bungie.net and check out the Grimoire, then a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. So, in this video, I'm going to try and explain all of the stuff as best as possible. So if you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Also, I want to give a massive shout out to the Drock21 on Reddit. He put together a really comprehensive post compiling most of the relevant Grimoire cards, so I'll link that post down below. Shout out to him, and of course, if for some reason you guys are still trying to avoid spoilers, then I'm going to talk about the story, so you might want to step away. Anyway, first things first, we have to go back. Siva, what is it? Where did it come from? Well, Siva was first developed at Clovis Bray, which was that facility that we visited on Mars in, I believe, the third mission. The facility was built as a hub of technological advances aimed towards the expansion of humanity. Siva itself is a nanotechnology that was designed to consume materials and use it to build other things. The idea being that you could then place Siva on a planet and it would then design whole colonies, which in theory is awesome. However, during development of Siva, the scientists had doubts about this and they voiced these to their superiors. The main concern being that Siva was designed to carry out its directive until it was given a new directive, i.e. it would just never stop. And if the directive was to find materials, build and grow, if it was then given a directive to build something bad, like a military weapon or something, then of course it wouldn't stop until it was given a new directive. So of course that was the main concern, but the superiors decided not to care. They continued with the work and Siva was developed. The last point worth noting is that Siva can't replicate itself. It needs to be in a replication chamber. So just remember that, because that piece of information is relevant later. So that's what you need to know about Siva initially. Now let's move over to the Iron Lords, because of course most of this story comes from the dormant Siva clusters, and as you guys know, if you see my videos, that's broken into three categories: Clovis Bray, Iron Lords, and Fallen. So, speaking of Iron Lords, just before we dive in with them, Rasputin was of course designed to be an extremely intelligent AI that was built alongside 6 other AI cores to protect humanity. These were also known as the War Minds, and during the collapse, the War Minds struggled against the darkness and they lost. Most of them are believed to be dead, and Rasputin fell silent for many, many years until the Iron Lords found him. Now, as for the Iron Lords themselves, after the collapse, we already know that the Traveller sent out ghosts to basically find fallen warriors and revive them so that they could then hold the light and fight back the darkness. And these people are known as the Risen. Now, what was left of humanity, of course, made its way to the Shadow of the Traveller, below the Last City. The Risen were then scattered, and it appears at the time that the ghosts had no idea what their purpose was. They simply just went around raising people and then protecting those that they brought back. Now, of those people that were brought back, the Risen, most of them just seemed to carry on normally. However, the important piece of information is that there were those who chose to use their power to gain control, and these were known as the Warlords. Now, the Warlords took over areas and became pretty bad people, and anyone that lived beneath them basically feared them for good reason. So, enter the Iron Lords. To begin with, Radagast and Perun set about to try and change this. So Radagast set about overseeing the destruction of the Warlords. They decided that they'd had enough. They called on Saladin and Yolda and asked them to join them and take on the Warlords. They agreed, and they decided to basically find others that they trusted and build an army or a force together, also known as the Iron Lords. Then, bit by bit, the Iron Lords started taking control away from the Warlords, and one Warlord in particular knew of the power of the Iron Lords and decided to switch sides. This Warlord is one of the stronger, more well-known ones, and he gave his land and his mountain to the Iron Lords, and his name was Felwinter. So, Warlord Felwinter, aka Lord Felwinter, he was also an Exo, he joined the Iron Lords and helped remove the Warlords from power. Job done. Now the Iron Lords grew. They had roughly 100 Iron Lords towards the end. They built the Iron Temple on Felwinter Peak, and they proved that they were there to protect humanity, not abuse it, so the Iron Lords basically paved the way for the Guardians. Now, near the end of the Iron Lords' golden days, they stumbled across the research at Clovis Bray. One thing in particular, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, was Siva. Now, the Iron Lords believed that they could use Siva to build a new Golden Age. The only problem was that Siva was locked away on Site 6. So, the Iron Lords went to find Siva, but they made the mistake of contacting Rasputin while breaking into Site 6. Rasputin didn't take kindly to waking up and finding unknown people in some very private and valuable bunkers. Rasputin also doesn't seem to like the Traveller, so he more than likely sensed the light in the Iron Lords. Either way, he then uses Siva to defend the bunkers. Siva spreads quickly, grows and escapes the vault, and this is where the problem begins. The main Iron Lords were inside the vault, whilst the rest of them were attacking from the outside. If you remember the cutscenes at the beginning of the game, then they struggled against Siva. They pushed it back into the vault, and the team inside headed towards the replication chamber, because as mentioned, Siva needs a replication chamber in order to replicate. But while fighting, Yoda came to the conclusion that they could not win, so she locked Saladin out. She created a large explosion in the replication chamber, and this sealed the chamber, damaged the remaining Siva and possibly the equipment, and Saladin was of course left alone, the only survivor. Lord Saladin then closed the Iron Temple, became the sole remaining Iron Lord. S-ATAIII also did survive, but she vanished at some point and will actually be making a return very soon to host the Iron Banner, in fact as soon as tomorrow, but we don't actually know where or when she's gone. That's a bit of a miss, so I'm hoping we'll find that out soon, but it is said that S-ATAIII lived with a peaceful colony of Risen. Anyway, that's the Iron Lord story. Now begins our story, where we actually come in the game. So first things first, story begins with House of Devils. The House of Devils basically search other planets for Golden Age technology. They have splicers who search for tech to advance their house, and after searching for multiple places, you guessed it, the Devils hit the jackpot with Clovis Bray. Good old Clovis Bray. They discovered several different things. The first is of course the mites, which they released upon the system. The second was the location of Siva, and at this point the Devils then moved back to Earth and began digging. They found Siva, began splicing the technology with themselves, but in doing so the Devils got more than they bargained for. Because if you remember the part about Siva continuing its directive until it's given a new one, well, its previous directive was to find materials, build and grow, right? In other words, consume, enhance and replicate. And of course the next problem is that these splicers made themselves part of technology. So Siva's coding then took over the Fallen with some weird results. The Fallen began to consume, enhance and replicate, and the other last directive for Siva was of course to destroy the Iron Lords. This is of course where our story actually begins, and this is most likely why the Fallen are attacking the Iron Lord Temple, because of their new coding, which is to kill the Risen. This is why Saladin is so nervous, because of course he doesn't want them to find out about Siva, which is of course too late because they have already found out about it. So the rest of the story is basically about us finding out what the splicers are doing and putting a stop to it. The next thing worth talking about is of course the final mission, which is where we see the Iron Lords taken by Siva. Now the reason that the Iron Lords don't look like themselves and they look more like massive distorted versions is most likely because Siva is also trying to rebuild a better version of them, which is why they don't look like their normal selves. Anyway, after that's all done, of course we destroy that, blow up the bunker. That means the replication chamber is gone, Siva can no longer replicate, so all that's left for us to do now is basically pick off the remaining splicers. And therein lies the reason for the raid. The Wrath of the Machine raid is basically just about us going and taking down the heads of the splicers who have made themselves into machine gods, and in doing so, we have hopefully removed the threat. And that's basically it. That is pretty much what went on in Rise of Iron, and what led up to Rise of Iron, and why Rise of Iron happened. So if, like me, you're confused, then hopefully that's at least given you some kind of answer. Of course, there's probably a much more detailed answer with many more Grimoire cards, but for the time being, that is the kind of quick and dirty version. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below. Let me know if I missed anything or anything like that. But thank you for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.